The Nigerian Economic Summit Group, in its role as connector, dialogue partner, watchdog, and intervener,
when you first start business, your target is to make your first million.
Seeks to change the narrative and trajectory of the Nigerian economy. Together with our partners, we're not just solving problems, but preventing them, because when advocacy succeeds, the nation transforms for the better. But advocacy is for the strong. It takes fact-based inputs, resilience, partnerships, courage, and a lot of heroes. So be our hero. Subscribe to our channel, listen to our messages, and engage with us. Together, we can transform Nigerian lives, communities, and businesses. Welcome to the NESG Radio.
At the turn of the century, West Africa had an unsustainably high external debt of over 90% debt to GDP ratio. In relative terms, it was the second most indebted region in the world after Central Africa. While some gains have been made, major challenges remain. Debt burden is not just about the present, it's also about the future of our countries, the next generation, and our unborn children. But debt is not a bad thing. In fact, credit is good. So it's about how do you manage it. Some of us would have seen the viral video of a Uganda lady living in Sweden who wondered why the West would call Africa poor when Africans save to buy, whereas in the West they live on credit. So the issue is that credit is good because I'd rather, if I start working at age 20, I have the option in Africa to save for 30 years and build a house at 50 when I'm about to retire. I would have suffered in 30 years in Nigeria, living in what we call face me, I slap you, having challenges with landlords and struggling. So which means my standard of living and quality of life would have been poor for 30 years. Another option is, can I get a mortgage at age 20 just when I start working? I build the house that I want or I buy one. I then pay over the next 30 years. If I have a choice, I'll go for the latter, and that's the power of credit. So the issue is mismanagement of debt is really the problem. And when this happens, the impact can be catastrophic for everyone, public sector, private sector, households. And we have examples of Greece and most recently Zambia to just remind us. So if debt can be managed and it can be good, so what are the issues? I'll say essentially we have issues around poor governance. Sometimes you have one government looking at it like, this is just what I need to worry about for my 4 or 5 year time, and then someone else will worry about the rest. So we need to start shifting our thinking from short-term to a long-term perspective. There are issues to do with transparency. What are we recognizing? What are we measuring? Is it complete? Do we have, for example, ways and means financing as part of debt? How about debt owned by state-owned enterprises? How about contingent liabilities? How about domestic arrears? And so on and so forth. We have fiscal indiscipline. We have low revenue base in many of the countries, and lack of capacity to just manage that debt, structuring the pricing, dealing with risks such as FX risk, measuring the cost of tax waivers on these instruments, and then poor debt structuring. Sometimes there's a mismatch between the tenor of the debt and the tenor of the project. Same thing with budgeting. So you borrow long term, but the law says budgets must be done on an annual basis. So these pose challenges. So in terms of strategies and options, what else can we be looking at within the West African sub-region? Can we have more collaboration with the private sector, such as PPPs to fund viable projects or projects in exchange for tax credits, social financing, undated bonds? And do we need a West Africa specific debt sustainability model? IMF, for example, suggests a 55% debt to GDP ratio, but we can tell, at least from the experience in Nigeria, that even sometimes last year, despite having under 30% to debt to GDP ratio, we were spending over 99% of federal government revenue just to service debt. Clearly, you don't need a prophet to tell you that that is not sustainable. Whereas in comparison to developed countries like the US, Singapore, Japan, who all have over 100% debt to GDP ratio, but very low debt service cost to revenue ratios. So our mandate for this roundtable is to investigate the efficiency and quality of debt accumulation in Nigeria and in the ECOWAS region, establish the openness and governance efficiency in debt accumulation process, develop a set of analytics that forms the basis to have the conversation on what strategies Nigeria could take forward and West Africa to resolve debt problems, ensuring fiscal consolidation and sustainability. We also hope to facilitate a platform for comparative analysis which identifies models that have worked from other West African countries, and finally to champion advocacy for advancing the recommendations. So as I close my remarks, oftentimes we seem to be dealing with the symptoms, which is the debt itself, rather than addressing the fundamental issues and the disease, which could be, range from slow economic growth, poor governance, lack of fiscal discipline, low revenue base, arbitrary tax expenditure, wasteful spending, wrong priorities of projects, and the list goes on and on. But I'll say I'm excited at the composition of the members of this roundtable and at the opportunity provided by both the NESG and OSIWA for us to be able to help address a fundamental issue and problem for our countries and chart the way forward for West Africa. I thank the commissioners of the Debt Management Roundtable for answering the call to serve. And to OSIWA and the NESG, we thank you for the opportunity to contribute towards solving an important problem for our country and West Africa. So thank you very much. That will be my opening remarks.
Thank you for listening to our content today. Remember to subscribe to the NESG Radio. Follow us across all social media channels and visit our website www.nesgru.org/NESG Radio. NESG, in the national interest.